JOHANNIS Blackman, born 1407, in Ninfield, Sussex, England. It is unknown if he had any siblings. He married Mary to WITHAM. It is unknown if they would have any more than one child together. Listing Mary as his spouse is a theory that will be explored soon enough, but some records seem to suggest his spouse as Maria rather than Marie. Furthermore, nothing is known of John's parents, except that a Blackman family flourished at Ensham in Oxfordshire in the 16th century. Regarding the surname, there are various spellings in the records for Blackman, others as Balkman or Blakman. The invention of the printing press in the 1440s allowed for the democratization of knowledge. Literacy rates skyrocketed, and common people began to read religious texts on their own. For the first time, they could make their own conclusions, spurring new interpretations of the Bible, inviting curious minds to investigate further. Perhaps around 1427 to 1437, John is well upon his way, following his scholarly pursuits. He'd probably be in his 20s or 30s when he earns such honorable acclaims as those that follow. JOHANNIS Blackman was a Carthusian, a master of arts, a notary republic, a chess keeper, a college fellow, and a biographer. He had a Bachelor of Divinity and was possibly a monk. He held a position at Eton, protecting the mentioned chest. He had contact with Henry VI. Besides Shakespeare writing a play about him, John wrote a Latin memoir of Henry VI that would be printed centuries later in 1732. Henry VI was King of England from 1422 to 1461, and again from 1470 to 1471, and disputed King of France from 1422 to 1453. The only child of Henry V, he succeeded to the English throne at the age of 9 months upon his father's death, and succeeded to the French throne on the death of his maternal grandfather, Charles VI, shortly afterwards. Henry inherited the long-running 100 Years' War, in which his uncle Charles VII contested his claim to the French throne. He is the only English monarch to also have been crowned King of France. His early reign, when several people were ruling for him, saw the pinnacle of English power in France. However, subsequent military, diplomatic, and economic problems had seriously endangered the English cause by the time Henry was declared fit to rule in 1437. Henry is described as timid, shy, passive, well-intentioned, and averse to warfare and violence. He was also, at times, mentally unstable. His ineffective reign saw the gradual loss of the English lands in France, partially in the hopes of achieving peace. In 1445, Henry married Charles VII's niece, the ambitious and strong-willed Margaret of Anjou. The peace policy failed, leading to the murder of one of Henry's key advisors, and the war recommenced, with France taking the upper hand. By 1453, Calais was Henry's only remaining territory on the continent. As the situation in France worsened, there was a related increase in political instability in England. With Henry effectively unfit to rule, power was exercised by quarrelsome nobles. While factions and favorites encouraged the rise of disorder, Queen Margaret did not remain unpartisan. She took advantage of the situation to make herself an effective power behind the throne. civil war broke out at 1455, leading to a long period of dynastic conflict known as the Wars of the Roses. Henry was deposed in 1461 after a crushing defeat at the Battle of Towton by Richard's son, who took the throne as Edward IV. Despite Margaret continuing to lead a resistance to Edward, Henry was captured by his forces in 1465 and imprisoned in the Tower of London. Henry was restored to the throne in 1470, but Edward retook power in 1471, killing Henry's only son and heir, Edward of Westminster, in battle and imprisoning Henry once again. Having lost his wits, his two kingdoms, and his only son, Henry died in the Tower, possibly killed on the orders of King Edward. Miracles were attributed to Henry after his death, and he was informally regarded as a saint and martyr until the 16th century. He left a legacy of educational institutions, having founded Eton College, King's College, Cambridge, and Oxford. It would be at Eton where John would be a protector of the chest. Sometime around 1450, John marries Marie. Later that year, their only child, according to records, Johannes, is born. John is 43. Later in time, a plaque would be discovered at a school John attended. It was found based on a monk rumor because of an inscription in a book. This plaque mentions Johannes and a woman named Mary de WITHAM, who could be John's wife and Johannes' mother. This could be a clue, or perhaps a dedication left behind by his son. If John was a monk, perhaps he had a wife in secret, and leaving behind a plaque was a way of leaving behind a record. In 1485, John passes away at age 78 in Somerset, England. We now rest at our 16th great-grandfather, who lived over 500 years ago. Over this half millennia, we've seen 14 generations of Blackman living in England. We've seen an early arrival in the New World with plantation owners as pioneers. They lived in America for 3 generations, long before our later ancestors would migrate to Canada, where we've seen 4 generations living in Leeds, Ontario. We've also seen a German bride bringing new culture and new flavors to our family tree. We ended with the scholar, but we've been tending the land for multiple generations. We've also seen a return to scholarly endeavors with our most recent ancestor, Laura, a teacher and principal with whip-cracking wit, who enjoyed traveling the country to see the wonder firsthand. 17 ancestors later, the branches reach out of sight, but they continue to extend far into the centuries long since past, and further yet, until the trunk reaches high enough it converges unseen into the unknown as one collective system of wide sprawling roots nourished by the blood of one uninterrupted line of survivor after survivor. History may end with Johannes Blackman, but the story does not. Although their absence is felt, their presence is too.
Overseas in India, the sun was dropping low. With tramp and creak and jingle, I heard the gun teams go. And something seemed to set me dreaming as I lay of my old Hampshire village at the quiet end of day. And it's home, lads, home, all among the corn and clover. Home, lads, home, working day is over, for there's rest for horse and man. When the longest day is done, and they'll all go home together at the setting of the sun.